Greetings, YouTube. Once again, Fred Clark from the Slacktivist has brought some wonderful information to light, and I thought I would discuss it here today. He's discussing one Reverend Charles Flowers. Now, Reverend Flowers is an individual that opposes expanding civil liberties to the LGBTQ community and feels that the rights and privileges of sexual equality and gender equality and orientation equality should be exclusively in the purview of heterosexuals, and that everyone else that falls outside the definition of that should not receive equal treatment under the law, which of course is unethical and immoral. And in the pursuit of that unethical and immoral worldview, Reverend Flowers has kind of talked himself into a very strange corner. And he's kind of redefined religious liberty in an attempt to put a little English on it so that it will fit his skewed, toxic view of the universe. Now, let me say something, that when someone espouses the idea, such as myself and Fred, that everyone in the United States should be treated equally under the law, regardless of sex, gender, or orientation, that is not an attack upon yours or anyone else's religious liberty. You are still entitled to believe what you want to believe. You are still entitled to express that publicly. You are still entitled to express it in your house of worship of choice, whether that be a grove in the forest or some mega church in the Bible Belt. It is not an attack on your religious liberty at all. Zero, none, nine, yet none, nada. But again, many people in the theistic community feel a need to pull out the persecution card, because that they can then wave that in people's faces, try to come off as the victim of something that hasn't ever existed here, and hopefully that then can use that victim card to blind you, distract you from the fact that they are espousing a toxic worldview that limits the civil liberties of fellow Americans, which again is unethical and immoral. But in the pursuit of that particular effort, Reverend Flowers says something interesting. He says, Flowers says his religious liberty trumps the civil liberties of LGBT people because sexuality is, quote-unquote, different than, and this is the good part, immutabilities like race, sex, where you were born, and your creeds that don't change. That last part's the big one, but I'm going to get to that in a second. Okay, race, I'm Caucasian. That is never going to change. Even if I get a jersey tan, I'm always going to be a white boy. Okay? Sex, and even that isn't a binary. There is a range of sexes out there between male and female, but I am born this way, and he's correct. That genetic trait cannot be changed. Interesting that he would bring up a genetic trait that deals with evolution. Where you were born, correct. I was born in Pennsylvania. There's no denying I was born in Pennsylvania. That will never ever change, so that is an immutability. He is correct. This last one, though. Your creeds. Now, a creed is something you believe in. Pathfinder is better than 4th edition. That's a creed of mine. It's also almost as controversial as the whole evolution versus creationism debate. But you see, I wasn't born with the belief that Pathfinder is better than 4th edition. In fact, neither of those sets of rules existed when I was born. In fact, when I was born in '64, there were no actual published rules for a role-playing game. So for me to have acquired that creed took time, my personal involvement in the hobby, and then my adoption of that particular creed as I was exposed to more than one version of my favorite game. So, maybe, just possibly, creeds are not immutable. Of course, what Reverend Flowers is referring to is his Christian faith. he seems to be under the delusion that he was born Christian. No. Now, you could say he was born into a Christian family. Okay, I was born into a Christian family. My father is a very loose Methodist, though I don't think he's been to church in decades. My mother was born into a Catholic family. I was raised in the Catholic Church. But I was not born a Christian. It was something that I was taught. Now, I can argue here, I have argued in the past that we are all born theists, but that's a different discussion. It's also interesting for an evangelical to say this. At the core of the evangelical movement is the idea that you can be born again. Now, to be born again means you have to convert from whatever religion you had before to the evangelical Christian belief that this particular reverend is supporting. Now, to change your creed from whatever it was before to what it is now, and I'm sure that Reverend Flowers would love if everyone was an evangelical Christian, means that those creeds were not, in fact, immutable. So, if that is his definition of why we should be denying members of the LGBT community civil liberties, his belief is founded on utter and absolute crap. I apologize for the motorcycle. And I think he knows this, of course. Again, he's hoping to obscure reality by waving some kind of distraction in front of your eyes, by attaching that statement of immutable creeds after a number of other things that are, in fact, immutable. It's a nice trick. He's full of it. He is spewing bull like a compost spreader on a farm, just everywhere he can get it, in the hopes that you won't notice what he's doing. And just like that compost, just like that offensive aroma that it might have, his statements are offensive. His statements are lies. His statements are disingenuous. And Reverend Flowers is espousing a worldview that is unethical and immoral and toxic. And I think that we should all ask Reverend Flowers, why is he doing that?